Welcome to another episode of Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today we're going to be talking about motorcycles. And my guest is from Nashua. He's been a pilot trainer or
flight instructor.
Flight instructor. There you go. Here at the Nashua Airport.
Yep.
And you are. I didn't know that you worked on ancient motorcycles. I'll call them ancient. So vintage is the right word.
Vintage bikes.
Vintage
yes.
bikes. So with that, I'm introduced Dave Schoneman on my show. And Dave, you actually built your own airplane.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I did.
It was the red one that was flying around.
Yep, silver and red. It was silver, red, and black, and
yep.
it was all metal.
And you made it yourself, and that's a lot of confidence.
It's a kit. You know, you buy a kit and you build a kit. And it's an interesting story. I grew up with tools. My dad, had tools. We had tools around the house and whatnot. I had a great-grandfather was a carpenter. He was a builder. So the family heritage was about fixing things.
Yep.
Tools, screwdrivers, wire, whatever. We can fix it. And so I grew up with that. I built a go-kart when I was a kid, but I worked on cars, worked on race cars. I dabbled in that when I was young. But then hadn't done anything for a long time, and became a pilot and had an airplane that Grumman had built. And I saw a plane sitting on the ramp one day, and it was beautiful. It was two-seat tandem, clear sliding canopy, and all metal. It was gorgeous. And I thought, I don't know what that is, but I want one.
Yeah, nice.
And then I went to a fly-in for experimental airplanes. I went with a friend of mine, and I told him, listen, you want experimental airplanes? You're my friend. I'll go with you, but you're crazy. Well, we go to the fly-in, and there is the airplane that I saw on the ramp. So I discovered by going to this fly-in that someone built this thing, and that's where it came from. And so I went through the process of looking for an airplane that was already built and couldn't find one, looked for a year. I was going to buy something that someone else built, and I finally thought, if I want to fly one of those things, and I do, I'm going to have to build it myself. So
where did you build it?
I built it in a hangar at Nashua Airport.
Oh, really? So you had to rent?
I rented a hangar from somebody. Yeah. I met a couple guys who were building airplanes. I went to visit them to see how their projects were going. They were sharing a hangar. And then I got a call one day from one guy who said, hey, the other guy's moving out. We got half a hangar for rent. Do you want it? And I thought, okay, I'll rent the hangar. And then most people order kits kind of piecemeal. You buy the tail section first, you see how it goes, and you buy the wing, then you buy the fuselage. I bought the whole shebang in one day. Wow. All except for the engine, because I thought, I want to fly that thing. But I was a little intimidated by it because I knew tools a little bit from my childhood experience, but hadn't done anything that big. And certainly, thought aircraft building's a little different than, fixing a toilet, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But it's a very complete kit, and you got a binder. It tells you how to do it, and you talk to people and whatnot. And I built the plane.
What was it like when you were going to take off for the very first time?
It was very scary. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well,
and I'll tell you a quick story about it. But I finished the airplane. I finished it in 18 months. Some nights I slept in the hangar. That was before I lived in Nashua. I was living down in Massachusetts, and I would drive up to the Nashua Airport. It was an hour drive. And sometimes I'd be coming up one day, and I'd go home, sleep in my bed at night, and then drive up an hour the next morning. I thought, I'm just going to get a cot, sleep in the hangar, go to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee, have some ramen noodles on my camp stove, and I'm good to go. Keep on building the airplane. So I worked on it fast. Yeah. And I got the plane done, and I had never flown one of these before. And this plane had never flown before. This engine was brand new. It had never been in the air before. And you go through all these things in your mind. You get on the runway and you work out, exactly what you're going to do. And I'm going to give it the power. I'm going to watch the power come up. I'm going to release the brakes. I'm going to start the takeoff roll. I'm going to get to my speed. I'm going to pitch up, and I'm going to be flying. And if something goes wrong at this point, this is what we do. If it goes wrong there, that's what we do. And if it goes wrong there, well,
you got plan B, C, and D.
Yeah, exactly. You have all that stuff. And, it's taken me about, 45 seconds to describe that to you. And I get in the airplane, I'm sitting on the runway, I give it the gas, and it took about 5 seconds for it to happen. So it takes 45 seconds to explain all those steps, but it happens like that.
Yeah.
So I gave it the gas, the thing accelerated. I was shocked by how fast it accelerated. And next thing I know, I'm in the air, and all I can see is blue sky. It's just going up. It's like, holy cow. And then I get up to 2,000 feet, And I look back and I feel like I'm still sitting back there. I don't know who's flying this airplane, but I'm back on the runway because I'm so far behind this thing.
Yeah.
But then I flew it around for an hour, and then, of course, I had to land it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I've never landed one of these things before. I've landed a lot of airplanes. I'm a flight instructor. I know how to do it. But let's see what happens. Here we go. And you know, it landed fine.
Nice.
So it was a fun experience, but what was shocking about it. And I built it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
cool.
what I discovered in the process of building it was how much I enjoyed building it.
Yeah.
So I finished that plane in 2006. Started in 2005, the project, finished it in 2006, and I kept track of how many hours I spent building it. Because like I say, I saw it and I wanted to fly it. I didn't want to build it, I wanted to fly it. But I spent 1,500 hours building it in my log, and I sold it this past January. We need more than 2 seats now. We got our son, we need more than 2 seats. But the time that I had it, I flew it a total of about 250 hours.
Okay.
So I spent 1,500 hours building it in the space of 1 year. In the space of 15 years, I flew it only 250 hours.
Oh, wow. You're still an instructor, right?
Still an instructor,
okay.
Yeah, still an instructor. Got a lot of hours, still teach people to fly. But what I discovered in that is how much I enjoyed the building process.
Sure.
I really, really liked it. And I hadn't done that kind of thing, for a long time. Working with my hands, figuring out problems, and coming up with a 3-dimensional solution to whatever problems. The airplane kit comes with parts that are built. And
Does it come with extra parts?
No. I don't think so. I had a couple extra, though, when I was done. I'm not sure if they came in the kit or not.
Yeah. Here's your instructions.
So what's this come from? Where's this thing? Yeah, we joke about it. I cut the piece 3 times and it's still too small.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to order new parts. But anyway, it was a lot of fun to build it. I really enjoyed it. And the thing flew great. And I learned in the process that I like building things.
How did you get started with the vintage motorcycle?
Well, I was interested in vintage bikes. I liked the Honda, 70s and 80s, Hondas, BMWs, all those were interesting to me. And I had recently purchased a brand new, in 2013, brand new BMW motorcycle. And while I was in the shop, buying this thing, I saw a restored, vintage, kind of customized vintage BMW from the 70s. And I thought, I really like this bike I just bought, but I want one of those too.
Those are axle driven, right?
They're, drive shaft.
Drive shaft, yeah.
Drive shaft.
Drive shaft.
Yeah, they have a drive shaft, which turns the axle. Yep. There's a shaft from the motor comes back and it goes through a gear box.
I'm not a mechanic.
That's okay. That's okay. So I picked one up. I had one built. This guy, some BMW mechanic. I thought, I want him to build a bike like that for me. So I had him build the bike. In the process of him building that bike and me, flying my plane around, I thought to myself, I built an airplane. I'm watching that guy. I can do that too. I thought I can do that. I can at least learn how to do it. So I shopped around for a couple of old Kawasaki's, early 70s Kawasaki's. And you pick them up for, at least back then, a couple $100. Today, these things are in high demand. Yeah. But you pick up an old motorcycle for a couple $100. And the previous owner said, yeah, it ran. Last time I parked it, it ran, but now the engine was seized. And the whole bike seemed to be there, but it was seized. And I thought, well, let me get it and tinker with it. So I tinkered with it and got the thing to run and took it apart and cut the frame and customized it, kind of made it the way I wanted it to look. And then I was looking for a parts bike of the same age, and I found one. I thought it was the exact same model. It turns out to be different, but I bought that basket of parts. So when I finished the first one, I looked at the basket of parts and I thought, I think I still have enough here to build another bike. Okay. So I put that one together, a little different design. And I thought I really wanted, those are 2-cylinder engines. Thought I really want to try like a Honda 4-cylinder, 750. They were the muscle bike of the day. So I bought a CB 750. It was a running bike and no key. I figured all that stuff out and took that apart and built that into something. Now I had 3 different bikes, and what do I need? Plus the 2 that I had already bought, the 2 BMWs. I got 5 bikes in the garage. What do I need these things for? So I'm going to try to sell the 3, and the 3 that I built. And it was very interesting. People saw those bikes. They said, I really like them, but what I really want is that seat with that tank with that wheel or that set of forks.
There you go.
Then they'd say, but you know, I've got an old Honda in my garage. If I bring that to you, can you build what I want? And I said, sure, I can do that. So those 3 bikes, it took me a few years to sell them. But in the process of having those and having them available, riding to different meets and whatnot, people could see the work that I did. They saw what could be, and they hired me to build bikes for them.
Now,
so that's kind of how I did it.
Prior to starting the show, I mentioned a particular brand, Bultaco.
Yeah.
Not too many people know Bultaco. It was like a trials bike or something to that effect. A friend of mine, his brother had one that was a 250, a Bultaco 250, and he used to do trials. Maurice Barriere from Nashua, and he did that on the trails back when there weren't houses over there. You know,
I know.
But you worked on one of those recently?
I did, yeah. No, it was a couple years ago, but a gentleman saw my ad on Facebook, and he saw the bikes. I had the bikes on display at a pilot shop over by the airport there. And he saw the bikes, and he called me up one day, and he said, hey, can you work on a Bultaco? And I said, well, I've never done it, but I think I can. Yeah. So he showed me, he had begun the project. He was a collector. Yeah. He had a bunch of Bultacos and some other Spanish. These are all from Spain, Spanish, mid-70s kinds of bikes. And so he had this bike that he had some work done. Someone had overhauled the engine. Someone had rebuilt the wheels. They were very nice. The frame hadn't been touched. The tank, that's a fiberglass tank that had been repainted. It looked nice. But the frame looked like something you just find in the metal pile over at the dump, It was just bad. Rusty and just in really tough shape. But he wanted me to take what he had and put it together. So stripped the frame down and got it sandblasted. It's a sandblaster here in town. I had him do it. And then my neighbor, Vernon McKay, he's a painter, and so he primed it for me. And then we fit everything together. And then we had the thing final painted and then just put it together. And here was a very beautiful, I remember those bikes as a kid. I never rode one. I rode that one. But everything's backwards on some of those older bikes. The shifter's on... Today, the shifter's on the left. Yeah. Back then, the shifter was on the right. Today, the Kickstarter's on the right. Back then, it was on the left. So, it was difficult for me to kickstart the thing and ride the thing around. But I finished it for him, and it was a very cool bike, 2-stroke. I took it to him and it had gas in the tank and everything. And I said, here, it's all set. So I said, what are you going to do with this thing? I'm just kind of curious. You're going to be riding it around? He goes, I'm probably just going to look at it. Oh, really? But it was... That must be nice. It was, it must be. But it was a museum piece, Bultaco. Yeah, it was a 125. It was number 135 out of 500 bikes of that model built. So it was rare. Oh, really? Was it a trials bike? It was a trials bike. Yeah, okay. Yeah, 125. 120. So then there's the Indians. I remember those were a popular Indians brand when I was a kid. Obviously Harley, but I'm sure you can work on Harleys. I got a Harley in the shop right now. Every bike, a friend of mine, Rich, I learned a lot from Rich. And if I had a question about a bike, I'd call Rich because he used to work in motorcycles here in Nashua, worked at the various dealers. And he would say things like, listen, they're all the same. They're all the same. And I'd look at that thing, I'd say, Rich, it's not the same. Because I wanted everything to be,
you either want a Chevy or you want a Ford. You either want an Indian, you want a Goldwing, you want this. There's a clientele for all of them, and they're very loyal to them. So but
what I discovered from working on all these bikes is that Rich was right. They're all the same. Yeah. They're all different, but they're all the same. An engine of this vintage, it's going to be carbureted. It's going to have points. It's not going to be electronic ignition. Yeah. So if you've got compression in the engine, if you've got spark, if you have fuel going in there, the thing is going to run. It's going to run. Yep. So you can take an old bike and you can resurrect it. Now the Harley I'm working on now, it hasn't run. It's in 1985. It probably hasn't run since 1990. And I got it to run the other day. I got to call the owner and tell him I got it to run the other day, but there's more to it than that. It runs, but it's not rideable, and it's not rideable because there's issues with the engine. So sometimes these things sit for a long time, and the valves can stick, or electronic ignition. It's solid state. You'd think it's not going to go bad, but they can go bad. And there's evidence of rodents in there, so rodents can get in there and they can chew wires and do all kinds of things. But yeah, you can take these old bikes and you can get them to go. And They're all different, but they're all the same.
About finding parts, is that hard to do these days?
It can be, yes. There's a big used market for parts via eBay, so I do a lot of eBay shopping.
Okay.
I can find the actual part number, the original part number. In the case of a Honda or a Harley or a Moto Guzzi. Moto Guzzi is a little harder, but in case of the large production bikes, and Harley and Honda and Kawasaki fall in that category, you can find the part number. And if you find the part number, you can search for the part number online, and somebody somewhere's got it. I needed a little rubber seal on this dirt bike that I had done for somebody because there was a little bit of oil dripping out. He didn't want a single drip of oil. I had made something, a rubber plug to go in there, but it wasn't holding quite right. Well, I found a guy in Germany who was selling one of those rubber plugs. So we imported a rubber plug just to seal up from Germany. And then on the Moto Guzzi I'm working on now, I bought a header pipe.
What nationality is that? Moto Guzzi?
That's Italian.
It is Italian.
Yeah.
Guzzi. Okay.
Yeah. Moto Guzzi.
Moto Guzzi. Yeah. That sounds.
Moto Guzzi.
Yeah.
So I can find used parts. eBay is a great source for that. There are aftermarket parts. So on this Harley, for instance, if I'm going to replace the electronic ignition, there are aftermarket, very high quality electronic ignitions that we can get. And if it's turn signals, that kind of thing, there are some companies that make replicas of the original turn signals. Other people don't want those big turn signals. They want something newer, so we can get a new design.
So you can do custom designs? All
kinds of custom stuff, yeah. We can cut frames, we can weld them, we can change the look of a bike. I had two bikes in the shop. Two examples of the exact same bike, so I'll tell the story that way. It'd be great to have them here. But some people saw this custom bike in the shop, and they couldn't believe how cool that bike was. It was so cool. It was a 1982 Yamaha Virago, and it was just gorgeous, this gorgeous tank and this frame, and it's like the handlebars and the speedometer. I was like, holy cow, what is that thing? And I'd say, you see that bike over there? They'd look at that, and there's a Yamaha, 1982 Yamaha Virago, stock form, sitting in the corner. And it's, even if when they were good, they were ugly, just nasty looking, I think. Now, some people out there might like Yamaha Viragos, and I've become a fan because I see what they can become. But you would look at that Yamaha Virago, the original one, and if we come on again, I'll bring pictures or something, but the original Yamaha Virago, what it was, the same exact model, and what it can be, it's unbelievable the kinds of things that we can do. So that bike was the original, not attractive, not the kind of bike someone really wants, but there's a following for a particular year, for the 82 year, not the 81 or the 83, but the 82 is very special for making a custom bike like this. And so no one's going to remark on that bike. You can ride that bike to get a cup of coffee, and people are going to say, what's that guy doing here?
It won't get stolen.
It won't be stolen. Yeah. But you show up with the customized one, and it's fun because you go to a coffee shop or you go to a meet or something, and you stop and you get off the bike, and very quickly there's a crowd of people around who want to talk about that bike. Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah. It was like with the airplane. I could fly it to a fly-in, the same fly-in where I first saw a plane. I'd fly my plane back, and people want to talk about your airplane. And it's just part of the whole thing. You know, people are into antique cars or muscle cars from the 60s or 70s, and it's about driving them. It's a lot of fun, but it's also about
fixing them and putting them together.
And then talking about it.
Yeah.
So we do custom work, and like I said, I can bring a picture. You wouldn't believe that the two bikes have the same.
And you're located in Nashua, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that people can pick it up, or they bring it to your place.
Either one.
Yeah.
I'll certainly do pickup.
Yeah.
I've got an old truck. I can throw a bike in the back of an old truck and bring it over.
Is there like a wait time? There must be. I mean, you must be on demand.
We do a lot of stuff. We're busier in the spring. Springtime, it's going to be a lot of oil changes, chain adjustment. I need new tires. Yeah. So I service the bikes too. Not just the ones that I sell or the ones that I build for people. I certainly service those. But if someone's got an old bike and they need carburetor issues or whatnot, it's been sitting, and they don't want to customize or they don't want it to completely restore it, we can certainly get it going for them again. So that's one of the things we offer. We offer get it going again service.
Right.
So we can do that. We can service that for the year. So that's what happens in the springtime. Then as we head towards this time of year, I've got a couple of people who want to bring in bikes that are going to be longer term, like winter projects.
Sure.
They've been riding it for the season. Now it needs a few things, or they want to change something. In one case, the guy's got a custom bike I didn't build, but he wants to change a couple things to make it a little more rideable for his style. And someone else bought a bike and he wants to update wheels and get new tires and whatnot. So we are busy, but I'll do the best I can to get your project in.
I live right off of the Henry Burke Highway, and sometimes you'll hear a muscle car going by, and you can boom, boom, boom. You can hear the music, and
yeah.
Sometimes they got the equivalent of a motorcycle going by, and it's like
might have been me, because that's a good road.
It's got a good road. These bikes got good sound systems too.
Yeah.
Some of these, can you work on those as well?
The sound system, like a stereo, you mean?
Yeah.
I can do that. I don't typically do that. Actually, that's really just wiring.
Okay.
These bikes are 12-volt systems. Some bikes are 6-volt system, but most are 12-volt systems. And that airplane that I built, that's a 12-volt system. And
really?
you know, and there's miles of wire in an airplane. And in an airplane, every single wire in the bundle is white. You know, they don't color code them. Every wire in the airplane is white. And there's a bundle of wires, and, you know, getting all that spaghetti, my wife calls it spaghetti, getting all that spaghetti organized and making sure that you turn the switch on and, you know, you turn the lights on and it does what it's supposed to do and not something else is tricky. But I enjoy the challenge. So I said earlier that this is about problem solving.
Yeah.
And motorcycle wiring is simpler than an airplane. The wires are color coded typically.
Yeah.
Honda is great at it because every wire, they only use each color one time. And I can look at pretty much any vintage Honda, and if I see a light green with red stripe, I know that's neutral.
Okay.
So it's the same color coding they've used throughout. Kawasaki did some of that too. They're not quite as good, but Honda will have a plug with 5 wires coming into another plug with 5 wires, and the colors on each side match. Moto Guzzi, they'll come in with 5 colors here and 5 different colors over here. And now you can't really tell, well, where's all this supposed to go? Now there's a wiring diagram, but it shows red coming into black and black going into yellow and, you know, all over. But so sound system, it's problem solving.
Yeah.
But a sound system would be doing the same kind of wiring,
Yep.
laying out the wires. I like to lay the wires out once, you know, so I lay them out. I build a harness or whatever I have to do, lay it out once, hook it up once, and I turn the power on and everything typically works.
If you have a system, if somebody comes in and says, hey, look, I had a little accident with it, there's a bent frame to it, do you have the ability to fix a frame, or do you?
I do have the ability to fix a frame. It depends on how badly bent it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how badly bent it is. But on that Moto Guzzi, it has the top frame. And the way you take it apart on that bike is you unbolt the top frame from the engine and you lift the top frame off. Oh. So it's not even a complete structure. The triangulation from the lower part is actually bolted to the top part. That's where it gets its strength. So that frame was a little bit bent, but it wasn't a complete triangle. You know, a complete triangle stove in or caved in is hard to bend out. But it had 2 front legs and 2 back legs, and they were a little bent. So I just kind of stuck it in something and bent it back. Yeah. So that's possible.
Yeah.
It's a little harder if the frame is a complete triangle. But what you can do in those cases, you can bend it, you can heat it up and bend it, or you can, if you have to, you can cut it out and then put in new pieces. So that's always possible too. So
you really like what you're doing?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds it. And
it's a lot of fun.
I've been for a long time. I've been wanting you to come on the show to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's unique, and it's just another service that is provided here in Nashua.
Yep.
And just wanted to give you a little bit more of exposure on that.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
If they have something, how do they get in touch with you?
I've got a website. It's our company is called Milliard Moto, M-I-L-L-Y-A-R-D, Milliard Moto, M-O-T-O. And we're on Facebook, Milliard Moto on Facebook. We have Instagram. Our website. You got
pictures of some of your work on there?
Yes, I got pictures of some of the work there. I spend the time working on the bikes, not working on the website. So it's a little bit out of date.
Sure.
But I do have those 3 first bikes that I did are all on that website, and I haven't put the rest of them up there. But our services are there, and our contact information is still the same. So we have an email, milliard.moto@gmail.com. And you can find me if you want to.
Yeah.
But we're right here in Nashua. We are a licensed New Hampshire business. Working out of the house right now. I'd like to find some bigger space when the time comes.
Okay.
But we're working right here.
So you can do inspections?
I cannot do inspections.
Okay.
I'm not licensed for inspections.
Okay.
We may do that at some stage. Right now, we do the customization or restoration or the repairs on vintage bikes. Once you start getting past 2000, I've worked on like a 2008 Ducati, everything starts to get very complicated once you get, it's much more electronic.
Okay.
So it isn't just electrical wiring, it's electronic boxes and devices that you need to plug in, like one of those things you use for a car to diagnose.
Yep, diagnostics.
And I don't do that. I work on the vintage stuff. I like carburetors. People hate carburetors. I love carburetors. It's the Bernoulli principle. They're super simple and they work great, and I can tune those things. I can fix them and tune them. Or if we need to, we can replace an old carburetor with a new modern carburetor where we can buy all the parts and all that sort of stuff. And I'm a dealer for Mikuni carburetors. I'm a dealer for Moto Gadget electronic gear. I'm a dealer for a lot of different items that end up on custom bikes.
The key is vintage.
Key is vintage.
Key is vintage.
70s and 80s.
Yeah.
70s are really the preferred. 60s, they were a little rough, but 70s, those bikes are a wonderful platform for customization.
Kind of odd thinking that 70s is vintage. I'm starting to feel
my wife says, 70s, that's not vintage. That's not vintage. She was born in 71. She says, that's not old. So
I was born in the 60s, and I thought 70s was rather,
Well, I was born in the 50s, and 70s is modern.
Yeah, exactly. So one more time, how do they get in touch with you?
Millyardmoto.com. That's our website.
Mm-hmm.
We're Millyard Moto on Facebook. You can find us there and send us a message. Or our email is millyard.moto@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show. And
thanks for having me.
If you want a flight instructor, Dave Schoneman. And if you need a vintage bike worked on or customized, Dave Schoneman. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
And thanks for watching Gate City Chronicles. We hope this is informative to you. And if you want to come on the show and talk a little bit about your business, we'd love to have you. So until next week, thanks for watching.